A single dad took 2 bullets saving a CEO's son during a mall shooting. The boy lived. The father survived. But his own daughter, the little girl waiting for him at school, the only family he had left, paid the price for his heroism. In the space between heartbeats, one choice destroyed everything. What he lost that day could never be replaced. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The hospital waiting room smelled like antiseptic and broken dreams. David Miller sat with his head in his hands, blood still dried on his shirt collar. Not his blood. His daughter's. 24 hours earlier, life had been different. Hard, but manageable. David woke up at 5:30 every morning in their small apartment, made breakfast for his 8-year-old daughter Emma, packed her lunch with the careful precision of a man who knew every dollar mattered, and walked her to school before heading to his job as a security guard at Riverside Mall. Emma was his entire world. After her mother died from cancer 3 years ago, David had learned to braid hair from YouTube videos. He learned to paint tiny fingernails without making a mess. He learned to be both mother and father, to kiss scraped knees and chase away nightmares. His paycheck barely covered rent and food, but Emma never went to bed hungry. She never knew how many meals David skipped so she could have seconds. That Tuesday started like any other. David dropped Emma at school, watching until she disappeared through the doors, her pink backpack bouncing with each step. She turned and waved. He waved back. Neither of them knew it would be the last normal moment they would ever share. That morning had been special in the way ordinary moments become precious in retrospect. Emma had burned the toast while trying to surprise David with breakfast. She had stood on a chair, carefully spreading butter, her tongue poking out in concentration the way it always did when she focused hard on something. The smoke alarm went off, and they both laughed until tears ran down their faces. "I wanted to make you breakfast like you make for me," Emma had said, looking disappointed at the blackened bread. "It's perfect," David had told her, taking a bite of the charred toast and pretending it was delicious. "Best breakfast ever." She had hugged him tight, her small arms barely reaching around his waist. "You're the best daddy in the whole world," she had whispered. He had kissed the top of her head, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "And you're the best daughter in the whole universe." If he had known those would be among their last peaceful moments together, he would have held her longer. He would have memorized everything, the warmth of her hug, the sound of her giggle, the way her nose crinkled when she smiled. His shift at the mall began at 9. David walked the familiar corridors, checking doors, monitoring cameras, nodding at store owners who opened their shops. He was invisible to most people. Just another uniform. Just another face in the background of their shopping trips. At 2:15, everything changed. The shots came from the food court. Pop, 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 the sound that turns regular days into nightmares. David's training kicked in immediately. While shoppers screamed and scattered, he ran toward the danger. The gunman was young, maybe 25, with wild eyes and a shaking hand gripping a pistol. He was shouting about money, about respect, about all the things the world owed him. David assessed the situation in seconds. The shooter was focused on one target, a woman in an expensive suit who was shielding a boy, maybe 10 years old, behind her body. The woman was Victoria Hayes, CEO of Hayes Technology, one of the largest companies in the state. Her son Ryan was visiting her at work when the gunman, a former employee she had fired for theft, decided to take his revenge. David didn't know any of this at that moment. He only saw a mother protecting her child. He only saw a gun pointed at innocence. "Security! Drop your weapon!" David shouted, moving to place himself between the gunman and his targets. The shooter turned, his face twisted with rage. "Stay back. This doesn't concern you." "Can't do that, son," David said calmly, his hands raised. "Whatever happened, this isn't the answer. There's a kid here. You don't want to hurt a kid." For a moment, something flickered in the gunman's eyes. Doubt, maybe. Humanity trying to break through anger. But then Victoria Hayes moved, trying to pull Ryan toward the exit, and the moment shattered. The gun swung back toward them. David saw the shooter's finger tighten on the trigger. Time became strange, moving both too fast and too slow. David had a choice to make in the space between heartbeats. He thought of Emma. Her laugh like wind chimes. The way she held his hand when they crossed streets. How she said, "I love you, Daddy," every single night before bed. The parent-teacher conference last week where her teacher had said Emma was the kindest child in class, always helping others, always sharing her lunch with kids who forgot theirs. He thought of the drawing Emma had made him last month, now hanging on their refrigerator, a stick figure of him wearing his security uniform with the words, "My hero Daddy," written in crayon. She thought he was a hero just for going to work every day, just for taking care of her, just for being there. Then he thought of that boy, Ryan, scared and crying behind his mother. Another child who deserved to go home safe. Another child who had a whole life ahead of him. Another child who probably made drawings for his mother, who probably had dreams and fears and people who loved him desperately. In that frozen moment, David understood something profound. Being a parent meant teaching your child how to live in the world. Every choice he made, Emma learned from. Every action showed her what mattered. If he walked away now, if he chose safety over helping others, what would that teach her? That love is only for the people we know. That we only help when it's convenient. That some lives matter more than others. No. He had raised Emma to be kind. To be brave. To stand up for others. And the only way to teach those lessons was to live them, even when the cost was everything. David dove forward just as the gun fired. The first bullet caught him in the chest, spinning him sideways. The second hit his shoulder. Pain exploded through his body, white-hot and overwhelming. But he had done it. He had gotten between the shooter and the Hayes family. He had given them time to run. Mall security arrived seconds later, taking down the gunman. An off-duty police officer who had been shopping helped apply pressure to David's wounds. Someone called an ambulance. Victoria Hayes was crying, holding Ryan tight, both of them safe because a stranger had chosen to be their shield. David lay on the cold tile floor, blood pooling beneath him, and thought about Emma. He had to hold on. She needed him. She only had him. But God had different plans. The call came to Emma's school at 2:45. There had been a shooting at the mall. David Miller had been injured saving others. He was being rushed to surgery. The school principal, Mrs. Chen, knew Emma's situation. Single father. No other family nearby. She personally drove Emma to the hospital. Emma sat in the back seat, her small hands clasped together, tears streaming down her face. "My daddy's going to be okay," she whispered over and over like a prayer. "He has to be okay." At the hospital, Victoria Hayes met them. She was still shaking, mascara smudged from crying, but she knelt down to Emma's level. "Are you David's daughter?" Victoria asked gently. Emma nodded, unable to speak. "Your father is the bravest man I've ever met," Victoria said, her voice breaking. "He saved my son's life. He saved my life. Is he going to be okay?" Emma asked, her voice so small, so full of hope. Victoria couldn't answer. She didn't know. David survived the surgery. The bullets were removed. The doctors said he was lucky, the wounds could have been fatal. He would recover, they said. Give it time. But while David was being operated on, while doctors were saving his life, something else was happening in another part of the hospital. Emma, overwhelmed with fear and stress, had complained of a headache. Mrs. Chen had thought it was just anxiety. But when Emma collapsed in the waiting room, convulsing, everyone realized it was something more. The doctors rushed her to the emergency room. They ran tests. CT scans. MRIs. The results came back, and they were devastating. Emma had an arteriovenous malformation in her brain, a tangle of abnormal blood vessels that had been there since birth, hidden, waiting. The stress of learning about her father's shooting had caused it to rupture. A brain hemorrhage. Bleeding that wouldn't stop. They operated immediately, but the damage was severe. Emma fell into a coma. When David woke from his own surgery, still groggy from anesthesia, a doctor he didn't recognize stood by his bed with an expression that made his blood run cold. "Mr. Miller, I need to talk to you about Emma." The words that followed were the bullets that truly killed him. Not the ones that had torn through his flesh, but these, clinical, careful, devastating. Massive brain hemorrhage. Extensive damage. Coma. Life support. Decisions would need to be made. David tried to get out of bed, tubes and monitors be damned. He needed to see her. His little girl needed him. But pain and weakness pushed him back down. He could only lie there and scream, a sound so full of anguish that nurses in distant corridors stopped what they were doing and felt tears spring to their eyes. He had saved a stranger's son. But he had lost his own daughter. The cruel mathematics of the universe had balanced the equation in the worst possible way. Days blurred together in that hospital. David, still recovering from his gunshot wounds, was moved to a room near the pediatric ICU so he could be close to Emma. Victoria Hayes had arranged it, using her money and influence to ensure he got the best care, that he could be near his daughter. Victoria visited every day. She brought Ryan, who clutched drawings he had made for Emma, pictures of rainbows and sunshine and the words, "Thank you," written in a child's careful handwriting. "I'm so sorry," Victoria said during one visit, her eyes red from crying. "Your daughter is in this position because you saved my son. This is my fault." David, sitting in a wheelchair beside Emma's bed, shook his head slowly. His daughter looked so small in the hospital bed, so fragile, surrounded by machines that breathed for her and monitored every failing system. "You didn't pull the trigger," David said quietly. "Don't carry that guilt." But they both knew the truth. If David had walked away, if he had chosen differently, Emma would be healthy. She would be in school right now, learning math, playing with friends, living. The doctors had been honest with David. The brain damage was too severe. Even if Emma woke up, she would never be the same. The bright, laughing girl who loved butterflies and ice cream and bedtime stories was gone. What remained was a body kept alive by machines, a shell of who she had been. David faced the impossible choice no parent should ever have to make. "Take your time," the doctor said. "There's no rush." But there was. Every day Emma stayed on those machines was another day of suffering, another day of false hope, another day of watching her slip further away. Victoria tried to help in every way she could. She paid all of David's medical bills. She set up a fund for Emma's care. She offered to fly in specialists from around the world. But money couldn't fix this. Power couldn't fix this. Nothing could fix this. 2 weeks after the shooting, late at night when the hospital was quiet, David sat alone with Emma. He held her small hand, careful of the 4 lines, and he talked to her. "I'm so sorry, baby girl," he whispered. "I made a choice, and you're paying the price. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was being a hero. But heroes are supposed to save everyone, and I couldn't save you." He told her about her mother, about how much she had loved Emma, how she had fought so hard to stay alive when the cancer was eating her away. "She made me promise to take care of you," David said, tears streaming down his face. "And I failed her. I failed you." He talked until his voice was hoarse, until the sun started to rise, painting the hospital room in shades of gold and pink that Emma would never see. Then he called the doctor. "I'm ready to talk about next steps," David said. The meeting happened the following day. Doctors, social workers, hospital administrators, Victoria Hayes, she had insisted on being there to support him. They discussed options, timelines, procedures. The words were clinical, but the meaning was clear. David would have to let his daughter go. "I want to donate her organs," David said suddenly. The room fell silent. If Emma can't live, then maybe she can help other kids live. Maybe some good can come from this nightmare. Victoria reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Ryan, sitting beside his mother, had tears running down his young face. He understood, in the way children sometimes do, the weight of what was happening. The arrangements were made. Emma was a match for 3 children who were waiting for transplants. Her heart would go to a 6-year-old girl in Michigan. Her lungs to a teenage boy in California. Her liver to a 4-year-old in Texas. Children who were running out of time would get to live because Emma wouldn't. "She's still saving people," David said, trying to find meaning in the meaningless. Just like her dad tried to do. The day came too soon and not soon enough. David spent the morning with Emma, reading her favorite books one last time, singing the lullabies he used to sing when she was a baby. He combed her hair and arranged her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Floppy, in her arms. Victoria and Ryan came to say goodbye. Ryan placed all his drawings around Emma's bed, creating a wall of color and hope and childhood innocence that felt like both a blessing and a curse. "I'm sorry I'm alive and she's not," Ryan said suddenly, his voice cracking. "It should have been me." "No," David said firmly, kneeling down despite the pain in his healing chest. "Don't ever think that. You both deserve to live. This wasn't a choice between you and Emma. This was just cruel chance. Bad luck. The universe being unfair." But even as he said it, David wondered if he believed it. If he had walked away that day. If he had chosen his own daughter's safety over everyone else. If he had been selfish instead of heroic. Would Emma be alive? The answer was yes, and that knowledge was a wound that would never heal. At 3 p.m., the medical team came to prepare Emma for organ donation. David was given one final moment alone with his daughter. "I love you," he whispered, kissing her forehead. "I love you more than anything in this world. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. You made every hard day worth it. Every sacrifice meaningful. You were my reason for everything, Emma. Everything." He stayed until they came to take her to surgery. He stayed until she disappeared through the doors. He stayed in that empty room, staring at the bed where his daughter had been, until Victoria gently led him away. Emma died at 6:15 p.m., surrounded by doctors who would carry her gifts of life to other children. Her heart was already on a plane to Michigan before David made it back to his room. The funeral was 3 days later. The church was packed with people David had never met. Mall employees who had heard the story. News reporters who wanted to cover the hero security guard. Strangers who had been touched by the tragedy. Victoria Hayes and her family sat in the front row with David, Ryan holding David's hand through the entire service. They buried Emma next to her mother. David stood at the grave long after everyone else had left, staring at the small coffin, unable to believe that his entire world could fit in such a tiny box. "I'm sorry I wasn't there to protect you," he whispered to the fresh earth. "I'm sorry I chose wrong." The weeks after Emma's death were a blur of grief and anger. David couldn't go back to work. He couldn't go back to their apartment, where Emma's pink backpack still hung by the door, where her drawings covered the refrigerator, where her laugh seemed to echo in every room. Victoria had continued to help financially, but David didn't want her money. He didn't want anything. He wanted his daughter back, and since that was impossible, he wanted the world to stop pretending that life could just continue. He wanted revenge. Not against Victoria or Ryan, they were innocent in this. But against the man who had pulled the trigger. The man whose choices had started this entire catastrophic chain of events. David learned the shooter's name, Marcus Webb. Former employee of Hayes Technology, fired for embezzling money, angry at the world, looking to hurt someone powerful to make himself feel important. Marcus Webb was in jail awaiting trial. He would likely spend the rest of his life in prison. But that wasn't enough for David. Prison meant Marcus was still breathing. Still existing. While Emma was gone forever. David started planning. He researched the jail, the transfer schedules, the court dates. He thought about how he could get to Marcus, how he could make him pay for every second of Emma's suffering. He was sitting in his empty apartment, looking at a map of the courthouse, when someone knocked on his door. It was Ryan. The boy stood in the hallway alone, his mother visible in a car parked on the street below, giving them space. "Can I come in?" Ryan asked. David wanted to say no. Wanted to close the door and hide from this living reminder of his daughter's death. But he stepped aside and let the boy enter. Ryan looked around the apartment, at Emma's toys still scattered in corners, at photos on the walls of a smiling girl who would never smile again. "I think about her every day," Ryan said quietly. "Emma. I didn't know her, but I think about her all the time." David said nothing. His throat was too tight to speak. "I know you're angry," Ryan continued. "My mom told me you might be. She said sometimes when really bad things happen, we want someone to hurt as much as we're hurting." "Your mom is right," David managed to say. Ryan nodded. "Can I show you something?" He pulled out his phone, fumbling with it the way kids do, and pulled up a video. He handed it to David. The video showed a little girl, maybe 6 years old, with a bandage on her chest. She was laughing, playing with a puppy, full of life and energy. "Her name is Sophie," Ryan said. "She got Emma's heart. My mom has been talking to Sophie's family. They wanted you to see this. They wanted you to know that Emma is still saving people. Still making people happy." David watched the video loop. Watched this child who was alive because his child was dead. Watched her laugh with a rhythm that belonged to Emma's heart. "And there's this boy, Jackson," Ryan pulled up another video. "He got Emma's lungs. He's going to play soccer next year. He told his mom he's going to dedicate every game to Emma." More videos. More children. More lives saved by the girl who couldn't be saved herself. "Emma is a hero," Ryan said. "Just like her dad. You both saved people. You both chose to help others even when it was hard." "But she died," David said, his voice breaking. "My daughter died because I tried to be a hero. And I lived because you were," Ryan replied. "And Sophie lives because Emma was. And Jackson, and Mia who got Emma's liver. They all live because your family chose to save others." He looked up at David with eyes that were too old for his young face. "If you hurt the man who shot you, it won't bring Emma back. It will just mean another person gets hurt. Another family gets destroyed. The circle just keeps going." "He deserves to suffer," David said. "Maybe," Ryan agreed. "But Emma wouldn't want you to become a bad person because of her. She wouldn't want her dad to throw away his life for revenge." David looked at this child, this stranger's son who was alive while his daughter was dead, and felt something crack inside him. Not break, it was already broken. But crack open enough that light could get in. "How do I live with this?" David whispered. "How do I wake up every day knowing I made a choice that killed my daughter?" "You made a choice that saved me," Ryan said simply. "And Emma made a choice to save 3 other kids. Maybe you live with it by remembering that love isn't about choosing who deserves to be saved. Love is choosing to save people even when it costs you everything." The trial of Marcus Webb happened 3 months later. David attended every day, sitting in the courtroom, listening to the testimony. Victoria and Ryan were there too. The families of the children who received Emma's organs sent letters to be read in court, talking about the gift of life, the blessing of second chances. Marcus Webb was sentenced to 30 years in prison. When the judge read the verdict, David felt nothing. No satisfaction. No relief. Just the same hollow emptiness that had lived in his chest since Emma died. But after the trial, something changed. Victoria approached David with a proposal. Hayes Technology is starting a foundation in Emma's name, she said. We want to provide financial support for single parents, help with childcare, education, medical expenses. All the things you struggled with. All the things that no parent should have to face alone. I don't want charity, David said automatically. It's not charity, Victoria replied. It's gratitude. It's remembrance. It's making sure Emma's story saves more than just the children who received her organs. Let us turn this tragedy into something that helps people. David didn't answer immediately. He looked at Ryan, who was growing taller every day, who was alive and healthy and full of potential because a security guard had decided that all children deserve protecting. I want to be involved, David finally said. If this is going to be in Emma's name, I need to be part of it. I was hoping you'd say that, Victoria smiled through tears. The Emma Miller Foundation launched 6 months later. David became its director, working with Victoria to identify families who needed help. Every single parent who received assistance got a letter that told Emma's story, not to make them feel guilty, but to remind them that they weren't alone. David also started speaking at schools and community centers, talking about heroism and sacrifice and the complicated mathematics of love. He talked about how being a hero doesn't mean you don't lose. Sometimes being a hero means you lose everything. But you do it anyway because that's what love looks like. Ryan often came with him, telling his side of the story, talking about how he carried Emma's memory with him every day. How he tried to live a life that honored the gift he had been given. I'm alive because a stranger loved his daughter enough to show me what love means, Ryan would say. Love means protecting others. Love means sacrifice. Love means choosing good even when it costs you everything. Years passed. The foundation grew. Hundreds of single parents received help. Thousands of children got chances they wouldn't have had otherwise. There was Maria, a single mother of 3 who kept her nursing job because the foundation paid for daycare. There was James, whose son got the surgery he needed when insurance denied coverage. There was Lynn, who escaped an abusive relationship with her 2 daughters because the foundation helped with rent for a safe apartment. Each person who received help got a letter with Emma's photo, a little girl with bright eyes and a brilliant smile, forever frozen at 8 years old. The letter explained her story, not to create guilt, but to create connection. To remind people that love ripples outward, that one act of kindness could echo through generations. David never remarried. Never had other children. Emma had been enough. She was his whole heart, and when she died, that capacity had died with her. But he found purpose in helping others, in making sure Emma's death meant something beyond grief and loss. On the anniversary of Emma's death, David would visit her grave. He would sit beside the small headstone that read, Emma Miller, beloved daughter, forever 8, always our hero, and he would tell her about the families they had helped that year. 53 single parents got childcare assistance, he would say. 22 kids got college scholarships. 15 families kept their homes because we helped with rent. You're still saving people, baby girl. Every single day. He would place fresh flowers, pink roses, her favorite, and sit in the grass, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that reminded him of her eyes. Sometimes Victoria and Ryan came too. Ryan was in high school now, captain of his debate team, thinking about colleges and careers and all the futures that Emma would never have. But he never forgot. He wore a bracelet with Emma's name engraved on it. A promise to live a life worthy of the sacrifice that had saved him. Do you regret it? Victoria asked one day during their anniversary visit. If you could go back, knowing what you know now, would you make the same choice? David was quiet for a long time. The honest answer was complicated. The honest answer was that he would give anything, everything, to have Emma back. To have made a different choice. To have walked away from that shooting and let someone else be the hero. But the honest answer was also that he had raised Emma to believe in helping others. To stand up for people who needed protecting. To be brave and kind even when it was scary. If he had walked away to save her, he would have taught her that love was selfish. That safety was more important than morality. That you only help others when it doesn't cost you anything. I would make the same choice, David finally said. Because Emma would have wanted me to. Because that's who we were. That's who we raised each other to be. Victoria nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for my son. Thank you for showing us what real love looks like. As the sun set, David stood and touched Emma's headstone one more time. I love you, baby girl, he said. I'll see you again someday. And when I do, I hope you're proud of what we've built in your name. I hope you know that you're still saving people. Still making the world better. Still my hero. He turned to leave, Ryan and Victoria walking beside him. 3 people bound together by tragedy and grace, by loss and love, by the terrible choice one man made in the space between heartbeats. David had saved a stranger's son and lost his own daughter. The price had been unbearable. The grief would never fully fade. But in the years since that terrible day, he had learned something profound. Love doesn't protect us from loss. Love doesn't promise happy endings. Love doesn't balance the scales or make the math work out fair. Love simply asks us to choose good when evil appears. To protect the vulnerable even when it costs us everything. To believe that every life matters, even when saving one means losing another. David had taken 2 bullets that day at the mall. But the wound that never healed, the loss he could never replace, was the little girl with the pink backpack who had been his entire world. Yet somehow, impossibly, Emma was still saving people. Still spreading love. Still making her father proud. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was what heroism really meant, not the absence of loss, but the presence of love so strong it chose others even at the ultimate cost. As David drove away from the cemetery, the setting sun painted the world in shades of gold and amber, and for just a moment, he could almost hear Emma's laugh carried on the wind, saying what she always said before bed. I love you, Daddy. Forever and always. I love you too, baby girl, David whispered back. Forever and always.